we are going to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about the hybrid workforce. So, in many parts of the world, a lot of us have been working remotely for just about a year and a half now. And as, again, in some parts in the world, some of us prepare to go back to the office, it means that companies need to start thinking really strategically about what hybrid first work looks like. It's going to be something that's really appealing to a lot of people. So I have here Charlotte Truman, writer for Computer World, as well as Val Potter, the managing editor for features for Computer World. And Charlotte, you have a piece coming up on Computer World, which is going to be published on Monday as part of, a bigger package of stories. So we'll be sure to link to that once it's live. But can you tell us a little bit, I guess, about what it kind of means to cultivate a hybrid first workforce, because that hybrid first is definitely different than like the, hybrid but by necessity, I guess, sort of work that we've been doing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Juliet. So a lot of organizations or companies in the past have kind of have this work model where people are in the office most of the time, but say if you've got kind of like a childcare issue or you've got like a maintenance issue and you need to be at home for whatever reason, you can flag that with your boss and say, hey, on Thursday, I'm going to work from home. Is that okay? Obviously, then the pandemic came along and kind of everyone was out of the office and in their homes. And now kind of moving forward, a lot of companies are looking to adopt this hybrid model where employees get to decide, say they come into the office once a week or they're in the office 3 times a week, but actually there's no kind of one or the other. There's no stipulation of one or the other. And the big difference, as you kind of mentioned, between hybrid allowed and hybrid first is that there's real intention behind making this hybrid work model actually work for employees.
Yeah. So I guess let's just, reference your article a little bit and talk about what you were hearing from some sources about, why they want to create a hybrid first workforce and kind of what it means to intentionally do so.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this is kind of driven by what employees want and kind of their experience over the last 18 months. Obviously, it's important to note that working from home in a pandemic is not really representative of working from home generally.
Certainly.
You can't even get out to the shops very easily. That's obviously not what your experience would be like normally day to day. But yeah, so this kind of intention behind it is making sure that everything you do in terms of your new kind of way of working, that you think about your hybrid workers first. So how are people that aren't in the office, how is, say, I don't know, how is the collaboration going to work, but also make sure it works for them just as well as it's going to work for people in the office. So if you have an important meeting, say, how do you make sure that the people who are working remotely have just a good experience of that as the people that are sitting in the office?
That's important. And Val, I actually want to turn this to you now. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what I guess the in-person versus remote bias could be when it comes to making important decisions like promotion, who takes on a project, and how managers are going to need to be really cognizant of who's working from home and who's in the office to make sure that people aren't getting looked over.
It's just a natural thing that when employees are out of sight, they're out of mind. And so, pre-pandemic times when most people worked in the office most of the time, including the highest levels, the people who got noticed, the people who got the plum projects, the people who then got the promotions because they had just done these plum projects, it tended to be the ones who were in the office more, and remote employees just often, even if they were working harder, they were, doing just as good or better work. It's just a lot easier to overlook people who are remote. And so once we all we all worked from home all the time, that sort of went away. The playing field leveled a lot. And, in a meeting, when it used to be there were 15 people in a conference room and 2 on the bridge, just, dialing in on the phone, it was really easy for those people on the phone to get forgotten. And so, then once we all went home and we're all in a Zoom meeting with the Brady Bunch layout, it puts everybody on an equal footing. And we all kind of got back to this level playing field again. And now once employees start going back into that meeting room again, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to ensure that equality once again. And that's why it really has to be intentional. You can't just assume that if the employees who are remote are having a bad experience, that they're going to raise their hand about it. You really, really need to engage them and be proactive and make sure that experience at home is just as good as the one in the office. And one of the things that the sources that Charlotte talked to kept stressing was that this has to come from the highest levels of management. If your executives are in the office, everybody else is going to think they have to be in the office too. Mm-hmm. They're also not going to understand what the experience is like. So for the remote employees. So again, it's if people are the executives themselves are working at home, they're going to see that's like, and they're going to know, okay, well, we need to work on this. We need to make this a more equal experience for everybody.
And just to kind of butt in and point to that thing about making the experience equal, and a lot of companies with a kind of, when they're talking about adopting this hybrid work model, one of the benefits, should I say, is that they can hire a more diverse range of people. So people with disabilities that might not be able to travel into an office so easily, people with kind of care commitments, or people that live too far away that normally they'd have been excluded from that job. So this point about management and kind of not knowing when management are going to be in the office, if that starts to slip and actually management do start coming back into the office 5 days a week, and people that can be more flexible with then coming into the office themselves, mm-hmm. Again, they're going to be seen to be there, and this unconscious bias will kind of slip in. And actually these kind of talks that have been had around kind of equality and diversity, they kind of slip away, because the people that say your new employees that might be disabled or might have care commitments, they start to think, oh, perhaps I do now have to go back into the office because I need management to see me. And actually it kind of just, the whole thing unravels and you're back to square one.
Absolutely. So it really does seem like the key to any success here is, and I know it's a pretty popular policy, Charlotte, it's like the overwhelming majority of company executives, C-suite executives say, yes, like we will allow people to work hybridly, remotely, whatever that really means for them. So, but it does kind of seem like if you're going to allow hybrid work, that basically just means that you really need to be thinking remote first, because it really does seem possible that these employees who are not, physically in person in the office all the time can be at a disadvantage, and also just that their work experience just won't be as good. So I think I want to maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about, some of the technologies around remote work that can be really helpful for implementing an intentionally hybrid work policy. So we've been everyone is Zooming all day long. I think we're used to that. But once some of us start being in the office, some of us are from home. What are some technology solutions, and also just the general policies that IT should be thinking about?
Yeah, so a lot of these kind of collaboration platforms that we've got so used to over the last 18 months are actually now, as they move forward and kind of continue to develop new features for their platforms, they're actually doing it, or a lot of them are doing it with this kind of hybrid workplace in mind. So they're talking to their customers, and their customers are saying, this is the work model that we want to have. How can your platform facilitate that? So you mentioned Zoom, for example. One of the things they've developed is when you're on a Zoom call, like like Val said earlier, you kind of have this Brady Bunch layout. Obviously, if you're like sat in so say that you had colleagues sat with you, or I had colleagues sat with me, normally we'd all be in the same frame, but then the people dialing in remotely would be in a separate frame. What Zoom have done is actually each person now will have their own kind of square, so it doesn't feel kind of so much like us in the office versus you dialing in at home. Everyone again is on that like level playing field. Another thing we've started to see is the rise of kind of asynchronous communication, especially asynchronous video. So Cisco actually kind of this week have announced a new product called Vidcast, where instead of trying to scramble to have a meeting when everyone's in different time zones, or everyone kind of is just busy for, say, weeks at a time, you can actually just record a short 15-minute video with kind of where you share your screen or kind of upload content that you would be presenting in a meeting, and then you upload it to the platform, and then people can view that as and when is kind of accessible for them. So yeah, companies are definitely kind of mindful of this new kind of hybrid way of working and what they can do to kind of help support companies with that.
And I'd like to stress too, it doesn't necessarily have to be new technology, but asynchronous collaboration has actually been around for a while. I mean, that's what Google Docs are, or a shared Word document. You don't necessarily have to be working simultaneously with your coworkers. You could, if there's a shared space where you can go and collaborate, it doesn't necessarily have to be in real time, and that really, again, helps those employees who have commitments, people they're caring for, children they have to drop off at school or not these days, who knows? Just not insisting, Zoom calls are great for what they are, but that's not the only way to communicate and the only way to collaborate. And so that's something to keep in mind. And another, something that's sort of riffing on that actually is a newer technology. I mean, digital whiteboards have been around for a while, but there's sort of a new breed of them that are coming out that offer a lot more advanced capabilities, and it really is they call them shared canvases or visual collaboration spaces, and they just sort of allow everything. There's that traditional whiteboarding functionality where people actually can draw as if it's on a whiteboard, but they can also put sticky notes on it, digital sticky notes. They can upload files, they can upload their PowerPoint presentation, they can upload videos, and it all just kind of lives in this one big shared canvas. And you can have one for every project you're working on, or you could have a team shared one, or however you want to divide it up. But there are new things and old coming out that are really good ways for teams to work together without necessarily having it be together in time as well.
Sure. And I think too, what I imagine would be important is really making sure that when a lot of your not a lot, all of your remote workers are going to be relying on, XYZ technology solution, I would imagine that it's important as an IT team to really make sure that you're engaging your employees as partners and making sure that you're available and open to hearing their opinions, because if they're having a really miserable remote work experience or a really miserable hybrid work experience, then what was the point of the policy in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things that kind of came up again and again when I spoke to people for this story is obviously every company is going to be different, and there'll be kind of overarching policies that come from on high that's just going to be how it is. Say, oh, you're mandated in the office these days a week, right, or whatever. There's going to be things that like senior management will, I can say mandate. But actually, as you kind of get down like the lower levels, and kind of like if you manage a team or something like that, talk to your employees, talk to your team, and be like, hey, what will work for us as a team? What's going to make us as a team more productive? Do you want to let your colleagues know that between, like Val said, I have childcare commitments, I have a school run between these times, so don't message me between these times because I'm afraid I won't get back to you. Or I work better in the morning, so can I start kind of 2 hours earlier and finish 2 hours earlier, as long as that doesn't, I guess, impact the wider team. Maybe that's something you can do. So you really need to, again, it comes back to this kind of being intentional with it. You really need to engage your employees, find out what's going to work best for them, and then yeah, go from there.
And I'd say that works for technologies you're adopting as well. Find out what your remote workers' pain points are, and try to work with them to come up with a technology solution that will help address that problem. And there's no point. And then of course, once you do bring in new tools and new technologies, make sure to take the time to train your users and that they actually understand how to use them. There's no point in throwing a bunch of tools at them and letting them sink or swim. That's not going to be a good experience for anybody.
Certainly not. So I think I just want to transition here to talking about, okay, these are all a ton of great strategies to implement and something to certainly be consciously thinking about, as, in many parts of the world, well, I shouldn't even really say many. In some parts of the world, companies are welcoming employees back on, certainly a modified basis in some cases. I want to talk about the consequences of not doing so. What is going to happen if you don't adapt, and how will you sort of get left behind? You, as in the company, your company.
Yeah, I wrote earlier in the year about the UK, at least, about how unfortunately working from home is not right, and it's not legally enshrined in law, no matter how much employees kind of want it to. And you're absolutely right. There is, although like the overwhelming number of employees say that this is what they want, some employers, I mean, I can only really talk to kind of what I've seen in the UK, but in certain sectors, kind of banking and things like that, they're very keen to get people back into the office. Even just this week, our Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK came out and said, young people, if you're not in the office, you're going to be missing out on kind of career progression. It's really important that you work from the office. So there is definitely still kind of a kind of friction, I guess, between what employees want and what employers want or are kind of willing to offer. But absolutely, I think in sectors where being kind of present in the office, where actually everyone has proven that you can work effectively from home, you don't need to have kind of face-to-face interactions with kind of clients or customers. If you are hiring for roles and someone comes in and says, hey, so what's your flexible work policy like? If you don't have one or you don't offer one, I think you're going to struggle to kind of take on a lot of employees or retain employees, because if every other company in your sector has got a good kind of flexible working or remote working policy in place, I know where I'd rather go. So I think that's going to be a struggle for some companies if they're kind of refusing to kind of adapt, I guess.
And again, there's that distinction between companies that are allowing remote work and then those that are embracing it and really supporting it, because even if you have a flexible policy, but then you don't back it up by making it a really positive experience for everybody, the employees, even if you're allowing it, your top talent's going to leave and go someplace else that's doing a better job of it. And even those employees who stay, maybe they just feel like they don't have any other choices. Maybe they're just going to over time become disengaged if they're working their butts off at home and doing the best they can, and they're not getting anywhere. They're not getting those promotions. They're not getting the good assignments. Maybe they stop trying so hard over time, and you're not getting their best work out of them.
And I know it's kind of still early days, like we've said, in a lot of parts of the world, offices aren't even reopening yet, or we're kind of still a long way off. But just anecdotally from people I know and some of my friends that have kind of moved jobs recently or interviewed for jobs, one of the questions they've all asked is, what's your flexible work policy like? How many days a week am I going to have to be in the office? And that's really, again, for my friends that have been interviewing lately, that's really kind of informed their decision about the roles they've taken and the jobs they kind of interview for. So we're already starting to see it happen.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for calling in and chatting about it. I think there's some really great takeaways here, not only here in the video that we've discussed, but also, Charlotte, in your article that we will link below when it is live on Monday, August 9th. So if you're watching this live, it's not currently up yet, but it will be. So come back and you can check out the link in the description. So thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Julia.
And Thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you are watching over on Computer World, do head over on the Computer World LinkedIn, do head over to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk. You can like the video over there, as well as subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can hit the bell icon as well so you're notified every single time we post a new video. If you have any outstanding questions or comments that we didn't get to, please do leave them in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you on Charlotte or Val's behalf. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.